OC. Viewer discretion is advised. Incoming transmission in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, guys? It's Courtney here from the Outcasted OC podcast, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. Back again, regularly scheduled programming. We're here to talk about Monday Night Raw. Now, this is the Monday Night Raw after King and Queen of the Ring, so we have a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Monday Night Raw this week started off with a King and Queen of the Ring video recap, obviously recapping everything that happened at the premium live event over the weekend, giving you a little bit of snippets of what actually went down in some of the matches, some of the drama that unfolded. Obviously, Gunther and Nia Jax winning the respective King and Queen of the Ring, and obviously what we got to see come out of the Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch match, which then we end up crossing backstage and we see both Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan have arrived to the arena, and we're going to be getting a rematch from what we saw at King and Queen of the Ring. Obviously Becky Lynch has pushed forward for her rematch clause to be in effect, so we're going to be getting them in the main event in a steel cage match, and I am very excited for this. We cut back to the ring where Ludwig Kaiser is already standing in the ring, and he has the honours of welcoming out not the Ring General but the King General. Now, he didn't say that, but I feel like that's just got such a better ring to it, especially now that Gunther is King of the Ring. So he welcomes out Gunther, and Gunther makes his way out to the ring, and before he gets a chance to say anything on the mic, he is interrupted and he is stopped by "We Want Randy" chants. Now, obviously, this is because of the backlash and the controversy that formed by Randy Orton's shoulders not being down on the mat when Gunther went in for the pin at King and Queen of the Ring. I know that they're going to play into this a lot, and I know that they are going to keep pushing this agenda that they want to have a rematch between these two at some point in time. I am totally here for it. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm absolutely here for a rematch between Gunther and Randy Orton. Gunther ends up getting a chance to speak on the mic, and he talks about how he beat Randy Orton at King and Queen of the Ring, and he is the rightful King of the Ring. And he says he's going to become the World Heavyweight Champion at SummerSlam, and, you know, he mentions how Damian Priest has really stepped up into this role, but he is somebody, and I'm referring to Gunther here, who heard and saw that the Intercontinental Championship picture lacked prestige, so he assumed himself up there, and he became one of the greatest IC champions of all time because of his reign. And he talks about how the World Heavyweight Championship at the moment lacks the prestige, and that he is going to step in that role and assume the responsibility, and he's going to bring prestige back to the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, the Judgment Day ends up coming out, and Damian is like, prestige? Do you think you've earned this? Do you think you've proven to me that you deserve this opportunity to go up against me? You've proven nothing. You cost Randy Orton this, and I've earned this. I won the briefcase. I earned that opportunity. I saved up for that moment to eventually cash in at WrestleMania. And he's like, do you actually understand how this works at all? And Gunther's like, I'm the King of the Ring. I'm waiting for somebody to teach me something because nobody's taught me anything since I've been here that I don't know. Damian Priest steps in and says, look, Gunther, I do respect you, but when it comes to me being the World Heavyweight Champion, what can you teach me? And Drew McIntyre obviously hears nobody call his name and still thinks, hey, somebody's called for me, I'm going to come out to the ring. So he comes out and everyone's chanting for CM Punk, and he starts off by saying, I'm going to nip this in the bud really quickly because when it comes to CM Punk, he has been around for 6 months, and the highlight of his return has been me, because if it wasn't for me, this man would have been fired, he would have been released, he would have been doing all this other stuff, but I'm the reason that he's excitable, I'm the reason that he's relevant, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, Drew McIntyre goes ahead and says that, you know, I am going to be the World Heavyweight Champion in 3 weeks. Now, we obviously got told at King and Queen of the Ring that there will be a match for the World Heavyweight Championship between Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre at Clash at the Castle. I could not be more excited for this. They've been teasing it for a very long time, so I'm very happy that we're getting it. Gunther kind of realizes during this entire interaction that he's no longer needed in this conversation, so he just dips out, which, I mean, I do that all the time anyway. If I'm not needed in a conversation, I'ma just head out. Why would I stick around if it doesn't involve me, right? And Damian is like, look, I'm actually not looking past you when it comes to this match. I know what you bring to the squared circle, and I know that you are somebody to look out for, so I'm not looking past you in any capacity. And Drew's like, look, Damian, at the end of the day, Judgment Day is screwing up because Rhea Ripley's no longer around, you know. Everything's gone to hell, you're stretched too thin, you need to focus more on this World Heavyweight Championship. And he mentions a number of UK wrestling legends, so the likes of Fit Finlay, and he also mentions Wade Barrett and a few others, and he says, do you know what they all have in common? They are, you know, legends in their own right, but they have not been World Heavyweight Champion or a World Champion within WWE, whereas I've been a champion 3 different times, so that makes me better than all of them. And Damien's like, are you trying to get under my skin? And then mentions, is your wife going to be at Clash at the Castle? And then obviously that kind of gets Drew McIntyre irate. Drew's like, pick your next words kind of wisely. And Damien's like, look, I'm just trying to get under your skin at the end of the day. And then Braun Strowman comes out and he ends up facing off against Damian Priest. Now, I feel like we could get that match at some point in time, considering that Braun Strowman is very much trying to go after the Judgment Day. But hey, I don't do the booking. Braun Strowman just came out for his match against JD McDonough. So we go to a commercial break, and then when we come back, we end up having the match between Braun Strowman and JD McDonough. Now, to call this a match would be an absolute disservice because it was pretty much 95% of the time Braun Strowman just absolutely obliterating the crap out of JD McDonough, just throwing him around, ragdolling him, hitting him with back body drops. He ends up hitting the Strowman Express, and there's a moment where Carlito comes in to try and help out JD because he's still trying to prove himself to the Judgment Day. And we end up seeing him attack Braun Strowman from behind, but then Braun ends up getting on top, and we end up seeing JD trying to hit Braun Strowman after the match with a chair, but then JD ends up running away. Braun Strowman did win the match, so the general consensus with this is that Braun Strowman pretty much just tries to chase JD around the entire night. How's your Monday evening going? Because I'll tell you how mine's going. It's going great. Backstage, where Kathy Kelly is catching up with Liv Morgan, who is the new Women's World Champion, and asks how she's feeling about the win at King and Queen of the Ring. And she said, look, I did not know that Dom was going to help me. He obviously just came out and helped me. I didn't ask him to. And I'm happy to put my title on the line when it comes to this steel cage match. Then we see Finn Balor, Carlito, and Damian Priest are all catching up backstage. And Damian's like, what the hell is going on? He's like, you need to find JD. We all need to come back to the Judgment Day Clubhouse and we need to regroup. Following this, we ended up seeing what happened with Bron Breaker last week. Now, him absolutely obliterating that jobber from NXT Level Up, and obviously the interaction that he had with Adam Pearce last week and the interaction that he had with Ricochet. Now, we end up finding Ricochet's in medical and he's catching up with Adam Pearce and he's been medically cleared. Then Ilya Dragunov comes in and he's basically like, hey, look, we've promised each other a rematch. How about we do this tonight? And we end up going straight into the match between Ricochet and Ilya Dragunov. Now, it's very similar to what we saw a couple weeks ago. Ilya's taking the fight to Ricochet straight away from the beginning of this match. He hits some really nice suplexes, and then we hit a commercial break. But when we come back, Ricochet ends up finding his strength, hits a really nice moonsault out of the ring off the apron, and we end up seeing a really crazy sequence. And then the Constantine special comes in from Ilya Dragunov, which gets a 2 count. Ricochet ends up kicking out of this. That we ended up seeing Ricochet actually try to kick Ilya Dragunov, and Ilya was trying to go for the H-bomb, so they both just ended up colliding. We ended up seeing Ricochet go for a shooting star press, and then while he's in the air, Bron Breaker just ends up spearing Ricochet, and I was like, oh my goodness, no. And so the match obviously ended because, Bron was meant to be suspended. He came in and he just started wrecking shop. Ilya starts chopping Bron, and then Bron ends up hitting Ilya with a spear. Then we see Adam Pearce coming in being like, what the hell are you doing? Like, ends up trying to get him out of the ring, but Bron is on a different planet. Head backstage, Kathy Kelly is actually in front of Adam Pearce and Bron Breaker in a full-blown argument backstage. She's trying to tell everybody that she's going to try to get a word in. Then Adam Pearce ends up walking away and runs into Kiana. Kiana ends up grabbing him for a conversation, and they go and have a conversation elsewhere. Karrion ends up interrupting Kofi, Miz, and Truth. Now, there's a Memorial Day special. I don't really know what's going on. I'm from New Zealand. I don't celebrate Memorial Day, just FYI. And Miz and Truth are trying to sell ice cream. I don't know what's going on. But basically what we're finding out is that Karrion seems to think that Xavier is wasted in a tag team with Kofi, which I don't think so, but hey, it is what it is. Head back to the ring where we have the Authors of Pain taking on the Creed brothers. Now, to say I was a little bit disappointed by the length of time and the outcome that this match had was an understatement. AOP are scrapping out of the gate, and then Akam ends up overpowering Brutus, and then Julius comes in with full speed, ends up hitting a really nice moonsault. Scarlett ended up attacking Ivy Nile, which I really enjoyed seeing, and we end up seeing AOP hitting their new finisher, which is called What a Rush. Say they secure the win. I'm happy that the Final Testament is kind of looking a little bit stronger, but we need to keep this momentum for more than just one day. And I don't like that this has come at the expense of the Creed brothers. Just a little bit little bit disappointing, but we end up seeing the attack segment from last week. Now, obviously, this was Carlito attacking the LWO, and then Ray ends up cutting a promo talking about how he was trying to welcome Carlito into the LWO with open arms, and then the attacks that you continually made within this group were a mistake, and you've crossed the line, and I will be fighting you tonight. And we see Sheamus is backstage, and he makes his way out to the ring to cut a promo. He talks about how he's super amped up, and obviously he was upset that he wasn't involved in the King of the Ring, and he talks about how Ludwig ended up taking him out, and then he calls Ludwig Gunther's glorified coat rack, and he says, all he does is talk about me. Then we see Ludwig up on the screen, and he's like, are you blaming me? If anything, you should be blaming Gunther. Like, no one tells me what to do. Sheamus is like, should I go get him? So he ends up running out of the ring and ends up making his way through Gorilla, and then he ends up going backstage to try and find Ludwig Kaiser, but Ludwig ends up ambushing him and just absolutely goes crazy on him. They both get into a full-blown scrap behind the scenes, and we end up finding out that they will be having a match next week, which I am very excited about for Ludwig Kaiser. Lyra Valkyria is in the locker room getting ready for her match, and she has bruises all up and down her body after the match against Nia Jax at King and Queen of the Ring. Becky Lynch comes in and sits down next to her, and I was a little bit emotional with what she was saying. I will explain once I've said what Becky Lynch said. Becky goes ahead and reflects and says, Saturday didn't go my way. It's not about winning all the time, it's about getting better all the time until it's time to walk away. And she looks at Lyra, she fist bumps her and says, you've got this, consider knee pads. If this is Becky trying to tell us that she's going to be taking some time away, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I don't know. It feels like only just yesterday we got her back at SummerSlam. So I'm hoping that WWE sorts her bloody contract out, lets her take a break from wrestling for a little bit, and she stays, because I don't know what I'm going to do without Becky Lynch in wrestling. I don't know if I will be continuing to watch. I don't like when Becky goes ahead and puts those kind of vibes out there. I'm like, girl, you gotta stop. We head back to the ring where we have Kairi Sane taking on Lyra Valkyria. Lyra's getting the upper hand in this match at the beginning, and then Kairi ends up taking over midway through. Kairi ends up unloading on Lyra, and she hits her with a really nice sliding forearm. She ends up taking advantage of the fact that Lyra is taped up around the ribs, and she ends up stomping her a couple of times. Lyra ends up countering the insane elbow and secures the win, which I'm a little bit confused by, because what did Kairi do? What did Kairi do wrong? I get that you're trying to push Lyra, I understand, but at the expense of Kairi Sane. Ross, if you're watching this, I'm sorry if you're disappointed, because, sir, I am as well. Judgment Day is gathering in the clubhouse, and Carlito is there, and Damien's like, you're not in the Judgment Day, what are you doing, kind of thing. We're doing this whole thing again. And we end up coming to the consensus that we cannot find either JD McDonough or Dom Mysterio. Now, Damien's like, look, I saw you talking to Liv earlier, don't try and act like it's something that it wasn't. Damien's like, I need to have a conversation with Dom, and he's like, what are you doing? Have you spoken to Rhea at all? And he's like, yeah, I have. She's a little upset with me, but she knows that I wasn't trying to do anything, he was obviously, I don't think he's spoken to Rhea. He's too scared to speak to Rhea. Anyway, so Damien goes ahead and says that you need to fix this or I'd hate to be you. And then we end up seeing Dakota and Kairi walking back into the damage control locker room. Io is just sitting on a chair, nice and calm. She sees Kairi and Dakota, and she just completely loses her shit. She flips, she breaks the table, I love seeing angry Io. It is so funny. I'm like, girl, that table broke in half way too quickly for it to look like it actually was a legitimate table. Back to the ring where we have the match between Rey Mysterio and Carlito. Now, I think Michael Cole said on commentary, this is the first time that they've wrestled one-on-one in 20 years, which is kind of cool. But I would have really reserved that for a pay-per-view. I wouldn't have had it on a random episode of Monday Night Raw, but hey, it is what it is. We got a good match out of it. Carlito starts in charge of the match. He hits a really nice backbreaker on to Rey Mysterio. Then Rey ends up going for a really nice moonsault. After this, Rey is obviously still being attacked by Carlito with a bunch of chops. Then we end up seeing Carlito hitting a really nice superplex, but Rey ends up finding his momentum halfway through the match. Carlito ends up drop kicking Rey, and then Finn Balor comes in and he ends up sending Dragon Lee flying, and then he ends up getting taken out by Rey Mysterio. Rey sets up the 619 and ends up securing the win, and then Damian Priest comes in because the Judgment Day cannot stop this stuff with Carlito and Rey, and Damian just completely wrecks shop. He's on another tier. He's like, I'm gonna sort this shit out myself. Chad Gable's catching up with Akira Tozawa backstage, and to say that Akira looks absolutely scared to be there is just an absolute understatement. He looks like he is absolutely crap in his pants. So Chad's like, where were you when it came to Saudi? I needed you. I'm really disappointed. Braun comes running through and he's looking for JD, but obviously he can't find him. Maxine and Otis end up coming in, and then Chad ends up manipulating Otis in his match that he has with Bronson Reed, which is right up now. Now this is obviously from the fallout of King and Queen of the Ring. Bronson's attacking Otis at the beginning, and then he hits a really nice crossbody onto Otis, but Otis ends up firing back and he ends up slamming Bronson. Otis wants to hit the caterpillar, but Chad's like, no, and then we end up seeing Bronson hit a senton and then tsunami Otis to secure the win, making very light work of him, which was quite sad. And then Chad ends up trying to get the attention of Otis because Otis just wants to leave, but he's like, no, we're going to have an Alpha Academy meeting. So we hit the commercial break, we come back, everybody from the Alpha Academy is in the middle of the ring, and Chad's like, look, you cost me the Intercontinental Championship. You blew it, Otis. This is because you lack discipline. Chad ends up unwrapping his belt from his pants, and he looks like he is going to beat the crap out of Otis with it. And then Maxine ends up grabbing the belt as quickly as he can. Then he ends up demanding Maxine to leave, and then Sami Zayn comes out before anything else happens. And Sami is like, what are you doing? You're a weak man. Every time you've had this opportunity, you've manipulated it, and you're the one who's come up short. You're blaming others for everything, but this is all on you. And he's like, look, Otis, I've spoken to you before about this, but you need to listen to the crowd. You need to stop listening to Chad. And then we end up seeing Chad attacking Sami, and then Sami ends up getting the upper hand, and it's just, we need to have the match between Chad and Sami ASAP. This is just going on for way too long at this point. We got a Liv Morgan Revenge Tour video package, and we got to see a reminder of what happened in the match between her and Becky Lynch at King and Queen of the Ring, obviously where Dom Mysterio helped out Liv to secure the win over Becky Lynch. We see both of them are warming up backstage ahead of their steel cage match that they will be having in the main event. Kathy Kelly's catching up with Shayna and Zoe and is asking, how they feel about being the number one contenders for the tag team champions. And they basically come to the consensus. They're like, hey, how about we invite Bianca and Jade to Raw? Sonya ends up coming in and says that I respect you guys and I respect what you've been doing, but the locker room don't seem to respect you. So Zoe and Shayna end up turning around and trying to walk away when they end up running into Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. I'm so happy that you guys finally found them because they've been gone for a hot minute. And they're like, look, if you're talking about being the number one contenders, you guys can't confidently say that you've beaten us because you haven't. So when we step in the ring with you, it's going to be like that, blah, blah, blah. And then Sonya comes back and goes ahead and says, I literally told you they do not have respect for you. So we hit the main event, which is Becky Lynch taking on Liv Morgan in a steel cage match. Now, obviously, we know the only way that you can win this is pinfall or via submission or via leaving the cage. So Liv is on the attack from Becky at the beginning of the match, and she ends up trying to escape a couple of times, and Liv is in control, but Becky ends up fighting back. She ends up hitting a couple of baseball slides onto Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan's in between the ring ropes and the cage, so she ends up getting her there. Hit the commercial break, but afterwards Liv is trying to escape from the cage again, and then Becky ends up suplexing Liv off the top ring rope as well. Liv hits a really nice code breaker, and then we end up seeing both of the women at the top of the cage. They're both trying to leave, and then Becky hits a disarmer on the ring ropes to Liv Morgan. Dom Mysterio ends up running out, and he's obviously trying to right the wrongs of what happened, and then he ends up opening the cage. He's trying to convince Becky to get out, to leave, so that Liv's no longer the champion. We see Finn and JD coming out, and they're like, what are you doing, Dom? What are you up to? And then Braun Strowman comes out and he finally chases off both JD and Finn. Now, what ends up happening is Dom is standing right next to the door of the cage, and we see Braun running around and he's chasing both Finn and JD. Now, Finn and JD end up bumping into Dom. Becky looks like she's trying to leave the cage, and then Dom ends up hitting Becky in the head, which ends up forcing the door to shut. Liv Morgan ends up finding a way to get out, so Dom ends up opening the cage again, I think, and then Liv ends up leaving, so she retains the championship. There's a moment where Dom is on the ground along the entrance ramp, and then it ends up cutting there. But from seeing things on social media, we end up seeing that Liv Morgan kisses Dom Mysterio, which I'm not really a huge proponent of, because I know that he's a happily married man, so I don't really understand why it was necessary. I get that she wanted to do it. Could have just given him a kiss on the cheek. I don't get why it had to be on the lips. He didn't look like he was vibing with it, which makes two of us. But yeah, a bit tacky. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a way that you can show someone's appreciation without having to have them kiss. And I get it. It's because it's, Rhea and Dom, and I understand. But I can't get with the kissing. Like, stop it. With that being said, that brings us to the end of the Monday Night Raw review for this week. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you go ahead and show that you did by liking the video and leaving some comments about something that you enjoyed about Monday Night Raw this week. What do you think is going to happen with Liv Morgan? Go ahead and sound off in the comments. I'd love to know what you guys think. While you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell icon so you do not miss any of our videos. You'll be notified as soon as we upload a new review or a podcast, so you will not miss it. It's easier than checking your sub box because sometimes things don't show up in the sub box. While you're there as well too, go ahead and check out the description. You can find the links for Outcasted on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok, as well as all of our personal social medias, so you can keep up to date with what we're doing when we're not posting on here. As always, you've got your regularly scheduled NXT review coming in from Reese this week, as well as a podcast from all of us where I believe we are doing a recap of King and Queen of the Ring. Still to be determined, but like I say, if you follow the socials, you know what we're going to be talking about before we end up putting the podcast out. You've also got the SmackDown review coming in this week as well too, so may as well stick around and check out the content. I will catch you guys in the podcast. I hope you have a really great day or evening, whatever time you're watching this, and I'll see you guys in the pod. Bye guys.